Picture 1,000 legionaries rising above the dust, shields locked in perfect rhythm, sandals grinding against the earth, sunlight flashing off a sea of steel. For centuries, scenes like this played out across 3 continents. From the forests of Germania to the deserts of Syria, Rome marched, and Rome won, nearly 79% of the time. No empire in history matched that consistency. But how? How did an army built 2,000 years ago master the art of victory itself? The answer lies in the one thing Rome never stopped doing. They constantly evolved. Their first armies didn't look anything like the legions we imagine today. In the beginning, they fought like the Greeks, shoulder to shoulder, shields locked in one unbroken wall of spears. The phalanx, a formation so strong, so disciplined, that for a time it seemed unbeatable. But as Rome expanded into the unpredictable heart of Italy, the rigid Greek model no longer fit the war they were fighting. The phalanx was a formation born in the flat fields of Greece. It relied on perfect coordination, a wall of heavy infantry, each man protected by the shield of the one beside him. Their strength came from unity. If one fell, the line could crumble, but if they held together, they were unstoppable. Early Rome adopted this formation wholesale, copying it from their Greek neighbors. It was elegant in its simplicity. One long line of armored men, shields pressed tight, spears jutting outward like the spines of a creature made for war. When they advanced, they moved as one, a slow-living wall of bronze and discipline. And it worked against disorganized Italian tribes who charged in loose groups. The phalanx was devastating. Those early Roman battles weren't contests of courage. They were demonstrations of order overpowering chaos. Rome learned quickly that discipline could win where numbers could not. But there was a flaw. The phalanx was designed for flat, open plains, the kind found in Greece, not in the hills and forests of central Italy. March that formation up a slope, and the perfect line began to twist and break. Ask it to turn quickly, and the wall shattered. Worse still, enemies in these regions fought differently. They didn't stand and clash. They struck fast, vanished into the terrain, then struck again. Hit-and-run tactics, javelins from the trees, ambushes in narrow passes. The phalanx couldn't adapt. It was strength without flexibility. For the first time, Rome's discipline became its weakness, and the defeats piled up. In those losses lay the lesson that would define Rome's destiny. If the terrain doesn't fit your army, change the army. So Rome adapted. The next generation of Roman commanders didn't abandon the idea of structure. They reimagined it. They broke the great inflexible phalanx into smaller, independent units called maniples. Each maniple was like a miniature army. 200 men who could fight alone or together, move forward or retreat without collapsing the line. When arranged on the battlefield, these maniples formed a checkerboard pattern. Gaps between the units gave them freedom to maneuver, to bend, twist, and flow across uneven ground. It was order redesigned for chaos. Now, Rome could fight in any terrain. A phalanx might crumble on a hillside, but a maniple could climb, shift, and reform mid-battle. The old wall of spears was gone. In its place, men wielded swords and shields, tools for close combat and quick reactions. Rome was learning that victory didn't come from standing still. It came from movement. But the real genius of this system wasn't just tactical, it was cultural. Every soldier had a defined role, a place in Rome's living machine. At the front stood the hastati, the youngest, least experienced men. Behind them, the principes, older veterans, better equipped, more disciplined. And at the back, the triarii, the hardened elite, armed with long spears and decades of experience. In battle, the hastati struck first, throwing javelins to disrupt the enemy's formation before closing with their swords. If they faltered, the Principes stepped in, fresh and ready. Only when the situation became desperate would the Triarii join, Rome's final line of defense. It was said among the Romans, "It has come to the Triarii." It meant things had gone terribly wrong, that only the most experienced soldiers could save the day. But it also meant something else. When the Triarii stood, Rome itself stood. This structure created something powerful, a constant cycle of renewal. The young learned from the veterans led by example, and the army as a whole improved with every campaign. Defeat wasn't final, it was a lesson. Every battle refined the system. Every loss made the next victory more likely. This, more than anything, explains Rome's legendary consistency. They didn't just win battles, they learned from them, and that learning became institutional. The Roman army was not a group of men, it was a process. But even this brilliance couldn't last forever. As Rome expanded beyond Italy, the enemies changed again. Now they weren't fighting tribal warriors. They were facing organized, professional armies from powerful kingdoms. And the manipular system that had served them so well began to strain under the weight of empire. Rome needed something larger, something self-sufficient. And so they evolved again. The cohort became the new backbone of the Roman army. Each cohort was roughly 600 men, about 3 times the size of a maniple, and fully capable of independent action. 10 cohorts made a legion, but each one was a mirror of the other. Gone were the distinctions of hastati, principes, and triarii. Every man was trained to the same standard, armed the same way, and expected to fill any role. Uniformity became Rome's new superpower. Now, a commander could take any cohort and send it anywhere, hold a line, flank an enemy, seize a hill. Every part of the army was interchangeable. This wasn't just tactical evolution. It was logistical genius. Each cohort carried its own tools, supplies, and engineers. They built their own camps, dug their own trenches, and constructed roads and bridges as they advanced. Wherever they went, civilization followed. A Roman army didn't just march, it reshaped the landscape. And because every soldier was trained to fight, build, and endure, Rome could project power across vast distances without losing cohesion. They could fight a battle, rebuild a bridge, and then march another 20 miles, all before dusk. The result was a war machine that could operate for years, far from home. While other empires fractured under the strain of distance, Rome's armies grew stronger the farther they went. The cohort system also changed the way generals fought. No longer did they need to control every small maneuver. Each cohort had officers empowered to act independently, to respond to threats, to seize opportunities. It was a decentralized army, centuries ahead of its time. That flexibility made Rome's conquests possible, and its consistency inevitable. Every victory reinforced discipline. Every defeat triggered reform. Rome's army became a living organism, constantly refining itself. By now, Rome's transformation was complete. They had built not just a military, but a philosophy of warfare, one rooted in adaptation. The phalanx taught them the power of discipline. The manipular system taught them the value of flexibility. The cohort system taught them the strength of standardization and self-reliance. Together, these formed the foundation of Rome's 79% success rate, a level of consistency that no other civilization has ever matched. But what truly set them apart wasn't their tactics or even their organization. It was their mindset. Most armies feared defeat. Rome expected it and planned for what came next. When they lost, they studied why. They rewrote their playbook, retrained their soldiers, redesigned their weapons. To them, failure wasn't shameful. It was data. After the disaster at Cannae, where Hannibal annihilated over 50,000 Romans, the Republic didn't surrender. It rebuilt its armies from scratch, adjusted formations, restructured command, and came back stronger. Years later, it was those same reformed legions that destroyed Carthage. That pattern repeated across their history. When Parthian horse archers shattered Roman legions in the east, Rome adapted with new cavalry tactics. When Germanic tribes outmaneuvered them in forests, forests. They changed their recruitment and terrain strategy. Every crisis triggered evolution. To the Romans, war wasn't an act of destruction. It was an act of refinement. Each campaign was a test of ideas. Every enemy, every defeat, every victory became a lesson. That's how you win 79% of the time. If you look at the arc of Roman warfare, from the rigid phalanx to the adaptable manipular legions to the industrial efficiency of the cohort, you can trace a single principle: the willingness to change. That's what made Rome unstoppable. Not its size, not its wealth, not even its soldiers. It was a culture that never allowed tradition to stand in the way of survival. Every empire that came after Rome borrowed this idea, knowingly or not. The notion that success demands constant reinvention, that victory belongs to those who learn fastest. So when we talk about Rome's 79% win rate, we're not really talking about numbers. We're talking about mindset, because the Romans understood something most of their enemies never did. Perfection isn't found in doing one thing flawlessly. It's found in changing before the world forces you to.